Welcome back to the Black Girl Iowa podcast, where we honor the voices, journeys, and impact of Black women shaping the heart of our communities. I'm your host, Emily, and today's guest is a powerhouse of purpose, scholarship, and storytelling. Abena Sankofa Imhotep is an award-winning author, educator, activist, and the CEO of Sankofa Literary and Empowerment Group. She's devoted her life to centering literature of Black authors, expanding literacy access, and cultivating a more just and joyful world. From the TED Talk X stage to classrooms and global conferences, Abena brings both eloquence and urgency to every conversation she leads. She's the visionary behind the Sankofa Literacy Academy, where she nurtures a love for reading in young minds, and the author of Omar's Big Tree and The Mighty Demay, a beautifully written children's book now distributed in 29 countries. Abena is the host of the Black and Privileged in America podcast, where she explores power, love, and money through the lens of Black empowerment. In this episode, we will talk about her mission to re-image literacy and liberation, the power of radical imagination, and what it means to truly show up for your community and yourself. So, ladies, gentlemen, and non-binary friends, I'd like to welcome Abena Sankofa Imhotep to the show. Abena, thank you so much for being
here. Thank you. I'm glad to be with you. Thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely. And okay, I gotta tell a story of when I met you. I gotta do this. So I met you earlier this year. First of all, I've been following you for a while. I watched your TED Talk a few years ago, and I was just like, oh my gosh, this lady is amazing. Listen to your podcast, and I went to a avid speaker session at Point Public Library, and you were the moderator. And I was like fangirling in my seat. And then basically afterwards, my friend that I went with was just like, go talk to her. And I was like, I don't think I should. Go talk to her. I was like, okay, fine. And I completely fangirled. And I don't even really know what I said. But all I do know is I definitely thanked you for being bold enough to create a space without permission. And at the top of this show, and I'll do it again later, I want to go ahead and give you your flowers, because that type of know-how and fortitude and perseverance is why I decided, was one of the reasons why I was just like, you know what, other Black women have not asked permission. They've done great things. I'm going to go ahead and do the same. So I definitely do appreciate that. And I really wish I could remember what I said to you. I just know I fangirled. So
I appreciate that so much. You know what? In terms of permission, I mean, if we're asking someone for permission to do anything, particularly the things that are aligned with our purposes, then we're saying essentially to ourselves, that person has control over my life, over the way I live and move and be. And I just refuse to allow that. We are Black women. I mean, hello, we are the mothers. Like, I'm your mama.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Why am I asking you for permission? Right. So, no, go forth, do your thing. I'm so happy for you and everything that you're accomplishing right now. Like, you're this bright light for all of us. So, thank you.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. And it's been a journey, and I'm really excited to now be in this space. But with all of my interviews, I always want to kind of start from the beginning a little bit. You know, we're Iowa girls. And what's so funny is I just had this conversation with a friend of mine from Denver, and how, you know, a lot of the people on my show have been from all over. And, you know, they've been from Chicago, they've been from St. Louis, they've been from Texas and all these other places. But it's almost like when they get to Iowa, they've been here for years. And when I'm like, oh, you're an Iowa girl now. No, I'm not. I'm from Chicago. Okay, girl, whatever. But you are an Iowa girl. So tell us about your upbringing, and tell us more specifically how your experience growing up in Iowa shaped you into the woman that you are today.
So, yeah, Iowa girl to the bone, born and raised. My family hails from northern Mississippi. However, both my parents were born and raised there. So, when they migrated north to Iowa, they brought with them the stress and trauma and struggle and joy, because there was joy, of being raised in the South during the Jim Crow years. So that is what they came to Iowa with, only to learn that Iowa wasn't too far removed from the circumstances that they fled. So I consider myself a first generation Iowan. I was in the first group of kids in my family born here.
Mhm.
I consider that to be such a wonderful. I'm gonna move my hair off my microphone in case that's a problem. Okay. Anyway, I consider that to be an interesting dynamic. I had a really great childhood, just on GP. Like my dad was able to purchase a home on the GI Bill here. It was a fairly new house in a formerly redlined neighborhood. I think the house that we lived in was 6 years old when they bought it, my parents, when they bought the house. And so they raised four children in that house. We had a close knit community around us and family on all sides, like a block over. My grandmother was 2 blocks over. I had an aunt up the
Mhm.
street, another aunt around the corner, an uncle on the other end. So we were all pretty close knit. The community around us was absolutely beautiful. There were people that we looked up to in our community, namely, first of all, mom and dad, number one, my grandmother, number three, then heroes, our hometown heroes like Kalanji Sadiq, uh,
Mm.
Ko Abdul Samad being a former Black Panther,
Mhm.
and several families in the formerly redlined area that we lived in, several families that had a historical presence in Des Moines. Their
Mhm.
offspring were emerging. And so that made for a really colorful childhood. I remember school being an adventure, and some of it was kind of bad because I was a little bad girl sometimes, but I mean, I had a great childhood in the sense of the governance of who we are as Black people to each other. Now, stretching beyond the neighborhood and beyond my family structure in the broader society, now that was a different conversation. There were
Mhm.
some things that we encountered as young Black folks growing up in a city like Des Moines, in a place like Iowa, that helped us to understand the racial construct of the society that we lived in, the larger society, things that we didn't have access to, the scrutiny that we would undergo when we would go to certain places like malls or banks or what have you. I mean, overall, I had a wonderful upbringing. And in my coming of age, I certainly learned exactly what Iowa was all about.
Mhm. That all really ties into, I feel like, our experiences in Black girlhood in Iowa, because I recently did an interview with Talk of Iowa on IPR, and I said something similar to where, in the family and community sense, I had a great upbringing. My mother and father made sure that I believed in myself and that I was able to have opportunities that even they didn't have. Even my mother is from here and my father is from New York. But once you went outside that safety, your parents also gave you that talk, that understanding that Iowa is still Iowa. It's still a predominantly white space. It is still, a what's the word I'm trying to use? It is still a beneficiary of white supremacy. And we all knew that growing up. And I feel like that kind of goes into your TED talk a little bit about Iowa nice
Yeah.
and about how it is all nice and shiny on the outside. But for us living in this space we essentially have to kind of proceed with caution. So, do you want to kind of expand a little bit on that about your upbringing and kind of how we have to take Iowa nice with a grain of salt?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, Iowa Nice was borrowed. It's a borrowed slogan from Minnesota. Minnesota
Mm.
Nice. Yeah, so we're already borrowing stuff that don't belong to us. So nobody asked for it, but we borrowed this phrase from Minnesota Nice. Now, from what I've learned in my research for that TED Talk that you speak of, is that Minnesota Nice was a point of entry to a conversation about sarcasm. They did not
Mm.
take themselves seriously. They really didn't believe that they were that nice. It was something to laugh about for Minnesotans, right? So when Iowa borrowed it, however, it became a cultural narrative that stuck. The idea that Iowans overall are these nice individual people who are always going to be helpful and are kind to everyone, and we have this air of fairness about us. And while that may be true in pockets of populations, or pockets, I won't even say populations, but pockets of people, the data says something different. Now, I'll circle back to my parents here because, as I said, they came from Jim Crow, Mississippi. And so the
Mhm.
lessons and the understandings that they learned in their lives, they gave all of that to my siblings and I. Like they taught us all that. They're like, look, don't you go over here acting crazy because the cops might do this and the white people might say that or this, that, and the
Mhm.
third. So it was important to me in that conversation in the TED Talk to be honest. I think we
Mhm.
owe it to ourselves and to each other to be honest about the time that we're in. Like, take the temperature. What is the temperature? And so that is what I try to convey in that talk. The fact that unassailable cultural narratives have been used to perpetuate the idea that Iowans are something that they are not to everyone. So I just wanted to use data and some anecdotes to kind of dispel that. And I hope I did a good job.
You did a fantastic job because as someone that I remember when Iowa Nice and that whole campaign came out, I was actually living in Arizona at the time. And I was looking at it through the lens of I don't necessarily live in Iowa, but I can see how these aspects are true. And I kind of bought into it. And then coming back to Iowa and recognizing that the Iowa that they were talking about, not only does it not exist, but the Iowa that we were currently living in at the time and still are is under a full Republican legislature and leadership. It doesn't exist, and I really think your TED Talk brought that awareness back to me to say, yeah, these things may be funny and tongue in cheek, but girl, this ain't it. You know what I mean? And granted, I loved my upbringing and I love and I'm very proud of the fact that I am from Iowa, but I feel like if you like in order to be happy and proud of where you're from, you also have to understand the history and then do what you need to do to make sure that it does not repeat itself. And that's really where I want to steer this conversation because I want to talk about the Sankofa Literary Academy and really your mission and activism on ensuring that our children are not only literate, but they have a better understanding of their history. So, do you want to talk a little bit about what led you to that work and why it is so important to you?
As I look back, Emily, I can't really, I honestly don't know how I got into it. I mean, there was this point at which I said, our kids can't read. I know I can help. So
Mm,
I think it was, let me, my memory is being jogged, I read a lot. I believe that a good writer is also an incessant reader. So I read a lot of things. One of the things that I read was some notes by W.E.B. Du Bois. He said he wrote in these notes that he and in The Souls of Black Folk also, but these
mhm,
notes in particular explained this thought that he had. He noted that he saw once the perfect system of education in
mm,
Africa. It was in Ghana. And he
mhm,
saw an elder with children, and they were sitting around a tree and they were in community, in conversation. The elder was learning from the kids, and the kids were learning from the elder. And it was more so an exchange of energy and information rather than one person dominating over a group. And
mhm,
so that has never left me. And so in my approach to Sankofa Literary Academy, that's literally the format that I invoke is let's sit together, and we might not be outside in an Iowa winter, but we can certainly, yeah, we can certainly circle up and exchange together. We can be creative. We can think about things deeply in our mbangi, which is our
mhm,
creative space to write and think, a space
mhm,
that gives us permission to say what we think and to
mhm,
have opinions without walls. Like you're not walled off from anything. So that's the space that I seek to invoke. And I've seen some really incredible things come out of the
mhm,
academy. So the academy itself is a literacy incubator and creative writing program
mhm,
for emerging readers and writers in grades 3 through 8. And
mhm,
so for third, fourth, fifth grade, I'm really focused in on their ability to read and comprehend. So we assess where they are presently and kind of think about what are the benchmarks that they need to meet to satisfy district expectations? And then beyond that, what is your actual potential?
Mm,
Let's think about that, because that's far beyond that metric set by the district. So we're not just going to meet that. We're going to see actually how far we can go together. So
right.
that was that's the program for 3 through 5. It's focusing in on their literacy and comprehension. And the first year that I started that program was 2021. We graduated 12 students from our program. I had a maximum of 12 because I want to keep the numbers small.
Yeah.
For impact, you want to really make an impact. 100% of those students showed an improvement in their reading scores. Three out of the 12, tripled their FAST test, which is a
Wow.
standard test that kids take for literacy. On the other side, we have the 6 through 8 group, and for them, I focus on creative writing
Hmm.
because let's express ourselves. Let's define the world that we're in this present time.
Yeah. And, I think that getting them to a level of proficiency and while also engaging with their imagination and through literature, I feel like that's something that um, I think that by engaging students with reading proficiency to start, right? That's at 3 through 5. And then engaging their imagination and encouraging them to write creatively. That's kind of like the benchmark of storytelling, isn't it? You know, I feel like students at that point, they have such a good opportunity to pull from their own experience and then think about the characters and the stories that they've already heard to really develop something. And I think that as we live in a world right now that is so focused on, content creation, social media, etc., the creativity piece and what you can put from your mind to paper is lost. So I have a question for you, and this was not on the list of questions that I sent, which is a common occurrence on this show. But when you are working with these students and you're seeing the light bulb and you're seeing the proficiency levels increase and you're reading their stories and you're seeing the excitement, how does that inspire you to continue to be creative? Because you are a writer yourself. You've written two children's books. You have your podcast where you're talking about money and the economy and really Black entrepreneurship. But you also have a Substack where you are also expressing yourself on current issues that are happening right now. But what about the creative space? What about the imagination? How does what those students do encourage you?
Well, I wanna
Inspire you.
clarify, absolutely, I wanna clarify first, I have 1 children's book and 1 on the way. So
One ok
yeah, 1 on the way, coming soon, but
okay.
this is what happened when I worked with my very first group of students, 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade students in the literacy component of the academy. They were the most rambunctious, outgoing, smart, group of kids that I ever encountered outside of my family. And I had this idea for a children's book prior to working with this group of children. The birth of my grandson inspired me. Being in Iowa and some of the things that were happening as far as climate change and politics, all of this stuff kind of converged to help support the idea that, yes, I need to write this book. But working with these kids, and pulling literature for them to consume and to be inspired by while I'm working with them, there was an absence of literature that I really wanted to utilize for the work with them. So it kind of sealed the deal for me at that point. I need to write this book. If for no one else besides my grandchildren, it would be for these 12 young folks. And so the inspiration and seeing their light bulbs and seeing them understand that they could do far beyond what other people expected them to do deeply inspired me and had a hand in writing my children's book.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think that is amazing because I feel like there are so many times, and we were talking about this before we even recorded, we're on the go all the time. I said specifically this summer, I don't wanna be outside. I was outside all summer. and I'll probably be outside all fall and all winter too. But when you have those pockets where you see the work you put in and you see it into the kids or the other adults that you're working in, and then you're then inspired, then you have something beautiful to really show for it and really represent that. And I think that that's something that I even want to take away as I go into my first year of teaching. So we'll definitely see how all that works and if I still have hair at the end of it.
You'll be fine. And I want to shout out my middle schoolers because at the end of the school year, of this past school year, I mean, at the end
Mhm.
of that, their compendium of work was published in Urban Experience magazine, which was
Wow.
a phenomenal feat. They felt like they could conquer the world, which is
Yeah.
exactly what we want them to believe. So, yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, to be published at a young age, I mean, some people go their whole lives. So that's incredible. That is incredible. So I want to transition into your podcast. So Black and Privileged in America has been out, and you were awarded Best Podcast last year for the Iowa Podcasters Association, which fantastic.
Thank
Kudos to
you.
you. Talked about this on my show, kind of what my light bulb moment was to say, I need a podcast. And, going into that idea of, Black women rarely ever ask permission to do anything. So what was your reason for starting your podcast? And
Well, it's interesting to me that I didn't even know what a podcast was when we got started. I had no idea. So, sending all the love to Amplify DSM, which is the podcasting house that I work through. It started out as a good buddy of mine had a podcast of his own that I had never heard of. To be honest, I didn't know he had a podcast because I didn't know what a podcast was, but he wanted to grow, and he asked me and a couple other people, "Hey, do you want to do a podcast?" And I was like, "Sure. What is it? What do we do?" So
yeah.
I literally went to his house and we sat in the dining room, and he had a small little mixing board about the size of like a toaster and two microphones, and I just started talking. I was like, "Okay, okay, I could get used to this." And then gradually I evolved into structured conversation that had a point. I think that's very important because at first we were just rambling, but I learned
Yeah.
very quickly that it's important when you have the ability to amplify an idea, whether it's figurative or literal,
Hmm.
that you have to be responsible for your words. I wanted to make sure that the things I said would be something that my children would be proud of,
Hmm.
and these are words that will outlive me. They're going to go beyond
Yeah.
anywhere that I could touch, right? So I wanted to make sure
Hmm.
that I had some responsibility and onus with the things that I said. So, of course, living a very Black centered life, it was important for me to make sure that Black people were my central audience. Of course, everybody listens. According to the data, we got some crazy listeners from all over the place, which I'm really grateful for. Power, Love, and Money conversations relevant to Black thriving seemed like a good place for me to land, right? I'm
Hmm.
always interested in, where does the money reside? Where's the money? You know, who's holding the power and who is harmed? And
Hmm.
then without love, can we really do anything at all? So those are kind of the three focal points that all of my conversations land in. And Emily, I tell you what, I've had a vast swath of guests, as you know, from just having
Hmm.
so many different people, access to different people that you can talk to. And they may or may not center the same type of idea that you want to, right? So
Hmm.
my focus is Black, but if I have a white politician on my podcast, he ain't thinking about us, he or she,
Right.
or
Right.
maybe they are, but it's important for me to ask the questions that need to be asked because we can't rely on other people to do the work for us. So I try to keep my ear to the ground. I'm listening to the community. I'm paying attention to, what's happening out in these streets. And then I bring all that
Hmm.
energy with me into the podcast studio.
That's fantastic. Especially when you have on white politicians or even white people that are out working in the community. Think making sure that you're leveraging a voice and reminding and holding people accountable that you aren't just serving one type of person, you're serving multiple people. I know you had our current governor candidate for 2026, Rob Sandon. And it's important for him to sit down first of all and have the conversation, but then also to understand what is important, what is being said, and take that back to his political campaign to say
Absolutely.
we need to be talking about these things too. And I will say, I feel like he has done that more so than previous our current governor. I'm not even going to say our previous governor candidates because I feel like they did but I think that with being from Iowa, with being Black, with being less than 5% of the population, our needs get lost in the mix. And there's this idea out there that we're not contributing when we are. And if not even at a little bit, we're actually contributing more. So don't forget about us.
Don't forget about us. Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
Emily.
Yeah.
So that's one way of looking at it, but I'm going to nudge gently and I'm going to say this. I was on a call with a person who is also in the running for governor. Mind you, when Rob Sam came on my podcast, he hadn't announced yet. It wasn't he hadn't announced. He was not willing to divulge that information on my show.
Mm-hmm.
And I also let him know, and anybody who comes on my podcast, I let them know, regardless of your motivation for being here, you are in my house. So take your
Mm-hmm.
shoes off and sit down. You know,
Yep. Get
this is
comfortable.
this is the governance of who we are. Like, I'm not yielding or bowing down to you. You're in my space.
Mm-hmm.
I've invited you in. So that's that energy too. But I was on a call recently with a person who is running for governor. And I asked a question to this individual and I asked them, you know, what's your Black strategy? Yes, we're 5% or less of this population, but we're disproportionately represented in the criminal legal system. We have
Mm-hmm.
disproportionate contact with law enforcement,
Mm-hmm.
disproportionate access to economic gains. Like, what is your Black strategy? This person's answer was, I don't have a Black strategy. I'm paraphrasing. I don't have a Black strategy. I haven't thought about a Black strategy. And I just think we all need to understand that not everybody that's Black in Iowa is poor. So this is the conversation. While yes, don't forget about us,
Mm-hmm.
some of them ain't even thinking about
Yep.
us. And I
We're
say
not
ain't with
even.
a capital A. They're not even thinking about us, right? Not that
Yeah.
we poor, but I'm saying like it's just not on their radar. They're not willing to renegotiate their idea of Blackness
Mm-hmm.
in Iowa and
Mm-hmm.
to meet us as a community of people where we are. So there's work to be done, and it can't
Mm-hmm.
be about relying on the people that are put before us. We've got to be willing to get people to groom and grab people from our community that understand what we need and what
Mm-hmm.
motivates and animates us. We've got to be willing
Mm.
to help them step forward and represent us.
The interesting thing about that answer is the piece of not every Black person is poor. I find that so interesting because that was not the main point of your statement. All right. See, now I'm aggravated because again,
Yeah.
that stereotype of black people in Iowa, they're poor. Wait, what? No. We didn't even say anything like that. We said we were taught. It's like you were asked about the disproportion of our representation in spaces where we are unfairly treated.
Yeah.
Because guess what? I have a job. If I get pulled over, my economic status don't matter. You want to know why? Because I'm Black. Period. Done. That's it. They don't care if I'm poor. They don't care if I have a job. They don't care how I pay my rent, if I'm on Section 8, if I'm none of that matters. That is why it's like you need to have a plan for your Black constituents. And yeah,
It was
I'm a little aggravated at was the thing was, well, not all Black people in Iowa are poor. Nobody said that. That
yeah,
wasn't
that wasn't the thing. And I feel like
that wasn't it.
it wasn't it. And this is the constant struggle that we are in a state like this where the majority of the population is white. Then our issues and concerns and interests get absorbed into other conversations.
Mm-hmm.
So I have made it my mission to continually create spaces for lifelong learning that center the literature and scholarship of Black authors and a place where we can just be and exist. and matter
Yes.
to each other. And eventually, my hope is that we start to see some of these tides shift in our direction because we're focusing in on our own strategies.
Mhm.
We've got to be able to confront the political struggle, the political question, the social question, the cultural question. We've got to have a mechanism to answer all of these questions.
Yeah, absolutely, and you said it perfectly of creating that space and making sure that that space remains sacred and it's a progressive space for us, I think is incredibly important. And that's actually going to lead me into my last question before we do something fun real quick. Not to say that this whole conversation hasn't been fun because I'm
It's
over
been a
here like
blast. Yeah.
it's been fantastic, but I'm also over here like, why the hell would somebody say that?
Mhm.
That just makes me mad. But the other thing that I've really been looking into and focusing, and I'm actually working on an episode about this, is the idea of legacy, of the fact that, every Black person in this country, we are all a part of a legacy that is representative of perseverance. And I want to ask you about with the work that you're doing with ensuring that our kids are proficient in literature and they are progressing in reading and really doing well in school, to having these conversations on your podcast and holding people accountable, and also just the work that you've also done on a national and international level with human rights. When you look at everything that you've done up to this point and everything that you want to do moving forward, what type of legacy do you hope your work leaves for the next generation of people that are ready to advocate and be active in this social movement of progression and ensuring that everyone has what they need to be successful?
Legacy is such a big concept, and I like to think about the people that I read and that I admire down through like the Black radical tradition and historically. And while yes, there is a sense of legacy, I like to think of it more of it as a baton.
Mm,
So I want to be able to pass this baton to whoever is ready. You know, if you're ready and you're running up behind me here. I'm gonna jog just a little bit ahead of you, but I'm reaching back with this baton for you to grab. And that's
mhm,
kind of the way I want to orientate my thoughts about legacy is I want to have this optimistic intensity about every aspect of my work. I hope um that's received and apparent when people engage with my work is that there is this optimistic intensity that I have. I want that baton also to have not only that optimistic intensity, but the notion that we have to continue to operate and narrate ourselves outside of the confines of whiteness. We
mm,
cannot allow ourselves to be swallowed up into that apparatus. We
mhm,
are beautiful and brilliant and genius on our own. And so
mhm,
the idea that we can operate outside of those confines is central also. So
mhm.
I want to I want to pass that baton. That's the baton. And that I was here. That baton has my name on it. It's got my fingerprint on it. So I just
Yes.
want people to know, mostly my grandchildren, that I
Mhm.
was here.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. And I love the idea of the baton because your name is on it. The more people that pick up the baton, the more names that can be added.
Yeah.
I think that's fantastic. So, before we end, there's something new that I'm doing on the show. And I like to do something to where we do a lightning round of questions where I ask you a question and we get a quick answer just so that way we can have a little bit of additional fun on the show, and then also kind of get you to think on your feet a little bit.
Okay.
First lightning round question: a book that changed your life.
Book that changed my life, Born in Blackness by Howard French.
Okay. All right. Favorite children's book growing up.
Oh my God. Where the Red Fern Grows. I can't remember the author, but Where the Red Fern Grows.
Okay. Quote or mantra to live by.
Yes, this is easy. Maya Angelou.
All right.
I come as one, but I stand as 10,000.
Ooh, that's a good one. I like that.
Yeah, I better get it right.
Yeah. One word that describes your purpose.
Human. Human.
Human.
Human.
All right. Pen or pencil when you write.
Pen.
Okay. Podcast you're loving right now, besides your own.
I'm loving what's the guy? Mehdi Hassan. Mehdi
Okay.
Hassan. He's the founder of Zateo News, and he's got an incredible podcast. He's a human rights advocate, a
Mm-hmm.
thinker, and he's bold, and I love everything about him.
Okay. I'll have to check that one out.
Yeah.
A Black author everyone should read.
My gosh. So many literally right in front of me. So I'm going to say Cedric Robinson, Howard French, Angela Davis, Annette Gordon Reed, U.E.B. Du Bois, Alain Locke, you name it, James Baldwin,
Okay. All right. Listen, all of them.
all
All
of
right.
them.
Sounds good. Are you a early bird or a night owl?
Both. I hardly sleep.
I know that feeling. A daily ritual that keeps you grounded.
Candles. I light candles at the beginning of my work, and at the end of my work, I blow them out.
Okay. And lastly, what does radical imagination mean to you in one sentence?
Radical imagination is the notion that there are no lines, there are no limits. We have the capacity within us to do and accomplish whatever we will, whatever we will.
Mhm. Okay. Awesome. Well, Abena, thank you so much for being on the show today. Your words and wisdom and presence are a gift. And I'm just so excited for my listeners to be able to listen to this and get inspired and also want to think about how they also are giving back to their communities, how they're holding people accountable, and then also how they are engaging in communities. So, to everyone listening, thank you so much for tuning in to the episode of Black Girl Iowa. This and all previous episodes of the podcast can be found on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, and YouTube. And also be sure to follow me over on Instagram and TikTok at Black Girl Iowa. Please make sure that you guys are also subscribing, rating, and leaving messages so that way I know that you're loving the content. And as always, keep showing up, keep telling your story, and keep being unapologetically you. Catch you guys on the next one. So let me ask you this. When was the last time you took a moment just for yourself? Not for work, not for school, not for family, but for you. That's where journaling comes in, and that's exactly why I created my journaling kits. Each kit is designed to make it super easy and honestly really fun to start your journaling journey. You'll get a decorated journal with over 100 prompts to spark your creativity, plus washi tape, stickers, cards, and even a sweet treat to keep you inspired. Journaling is more than just writing. It's self-care, it's reflection, it's dreaming bigger. And with these kits, you don't have to stare at a blank page wondering where to start. I've got you covered with prompts that will help you reflect, plan, and grow. They're just $18, and you can grab yours today on Etsy in the Black Girl Iowa shop. Don't wait to start your journaling journey. Your thoughts, your dreams, your story, they deserve a page.